the Rohingya community. And I have to say, in fact, she's been looking for excuses, saying that, well, we have to look at nationality and we have to look at some of the legalities. So to appease these military dictators in her country, it seemed like, or she's appeasing the majority, rather than speaking about the truth about human rights and also rights for all people that live in Burma, whether they are, I know from my own information that these are legitimate Burmese citizens who've not had the right because they've been there for generations and hundreds of years in Burma. But they are looking for excuses to say that, oh, well, these are some of the Bangladeshi brothers and sisters who've come over the border in 1971 and in 1945 and 1946 and all that nonsense. The fact is, these are human beings deliberately targeted by the government of Burma, deliberately started this. I don't know whether you know, but the allegation was that what these three so-called Muslims from the Rohingya community allegedly raped a Buddhist girl. Now, apparently, these three have been prosecuted, and apparently they've been sentenced. But then there was a reaction by these the community, the Buddhist community, and they went and burnt a bus full of Rohingya Muslims. Then they went and burnt mosques and they burnt villages. They drove out lots of these Rohingya minorities from their villages, from their houses, and of course there was a reaction, but no comparison whatsoever. 100,000 people made homeless, literally hundreds, if not thousands, have been killed. And sadly, nobody in the international community, we were busy with the Olympics, and none of the other international leaders said anything. Let me praise the Turkish government here. Thank you to the Foreign Minister of Turkey for going across to Burma and raising the concern at international level, and also putting pressure on the Burmese government. I wrote to the Foreign Secretary, I wrote to the UN Secretary General, and I've got copies of letter from the UN Secretary General's office, the Special Rapporteur who went there and has replied fully in relation to what he did on 13th of June and also the recent commission that has been set up. 27-member commission set up by the government of Burma on 17th of August. Well, I agree with Ghaffar. It cannot be an internal commission because they will try and bury the evidence. Let's demand that there is a UN commission or a commission set up by the international community so we know the truth. But more importantly, I think we need to demand that the 3 million Rohingya community, members of the community get equal rights as any other Burmese citizen. It's no good that they keep saying that these are foreign nationals who've come to this country. It's no good that, sort of like trying to bury this situation now and then for it to emerge again. Because whenever there is tension within the Burmese political situation, that they can divert it onto the minority. So I think it's important that first, every citizen of Burma, every person who lives in Burma right now needs to have the citizenship and papers. And that means every Rohingya member of the community who are Muslim or not Muslim, they should get their identity cards, because many of them do not have identity cards. They don't even exist. And I have to say, I know that some of you might even start throwing things. But even though I accept that Bangladesh is a poor country, but I think the Prime Minister is being tough by saying that she will not allow anyone. This is a problem of the Burmese community. I know that there was, Pakistan is not a rich country, but Pakistan hosted 5 million Afghans, and there are still 3 million Afghans living in Pakistan today. So I think there should have been some more humanitarian. Yes, Bangladesh is poor, but Bangladesh, I think, had moral responsibility to provide some political support, also diplomatic support, if not some real logistic support by letting some of those innocent people who were targeted by the local indigenous Burmese. So I think that we need to do more. I know Indonesian foreign minister has been, the OIC have been asked to take a delegation. We should demand that British Muslim parliamentarians, Sister Baroness Uddin and myself and Yasmin, who went to the ambassador's office with me, and Sadiq Khan, I know, has written, and others, Baroness Saida Barsi, I know, she rang me and she asked me a full report on what was happening, and I know since then William Hague has made a statement. We need to take a coalition of British parliamentarians, Muslim, non-Muslim, those who fight for the right of minorities, to go and put pressure not only on the ambassador of Burma but also the government of Burma too. Thank you for your support and thank you for listening.
Rohingyas are actually a predominantly Muslim community living in Arakan, early 7th century AD. And they are indigenous people of Arakan, and they have long history in Burma. And they trace their ancestry from Arabs, Moors, Pathans, Mughals, Bengalis, and some Indo-Mongolite people. Rohingya Muslims have their ethnic rights during democratic period 1948 to 1962. And even Rohingya language was relayed in Burmese radio broadcasting program on that time. And after 1962, General Newin took power. He started ethnic cleansing to the Rohingya people of Arakan. And population of Rohingya is approximately 3 million, and 1.5 million have been left out of the country because of continued persecution. In the past year, anti-Muslim violence, xenophobic, and racist propaganda have increased against Muslims in general and Rohingya people in particular. Ladies and gentlemen, Rohingyas are considered like an aliens, as an aliens in their ancestral homeland because of their ethnicity and religion. They are discriminated against and not tolerated for their skin or Southeast Asian appearance. Rohingyas are not tolerated at all in Burma. We are facing ethnic, religious, and political persecution in Burma. It is widespread, it is systematic, it is devised by Burmese military junta and has been for last 50 years. It is also systematic and a step-by-step process. It is long-standing. Currently, Rohingyas are facing denial of citizenship, restriction of movement, restriction on education, confiscation of lands, restriction on marriage, religious persecution, sexual abuse and rape, forced labor, and confiscation of lands. I would like to draw your attention to recent violence, as many people know about that. And the violence recently which happened was well planned by the state government, led by Rakhine RNDP, which is Rakhine National Development Party, and together with central government, which is led by Tengsi. And during the violence, police officers, security officers carried out the attack Muslim Rohingyas in the streets and villages of Siktui, Mongdo, Reteda, Chokto, in many other towns. At least 900 Rohingya have been killed by Rakhine and with local government authorities. At least, according to our information, at least 2,000 people have been missing. Some reports saying like 10 to 15,000 people are missing. because we don't know exactly, we didn't get proper information. Some areas are quite remote areas. And 41 villages burned down and destroyed, and more than 100,000 people are displaced. And 21 boats from sea trade pushed back by Bangladeshi government. We still don't know from them, 9 boats are still missing today. And during the violence, the curfew was imposed in tribal areas, and the Rakhine Buddhists equipped with lethal weapons set free attacked Rohingya Muslims. And police and security forces opened fire to Rohingyas' homes at random, even in the dead night. When the inhabitants or victims started running pell-mell from their houses, the armed forces shot at, killed, injured them while the Rakhine were torching their houses. The murdered people included children, women, and old men. Those Rohingyas who were shot dead or killed were taken by the security forces. The dead bodies have not been returned to their families. The dead bodies were reportedly burned into ashes, thrown into the sea. Those were reported dead bodies floating in the water. My dear friends, despite the state emergency declared during the violence by President Thein, the situation continues to be serious, with infiltration by armed Rakhine collaborating the police security forces. In the meantime, Rakhine authorities and government authorities are busy with media, including state media, supplying fabricated news. With the outbreak of violence in Arakan being sealed from outside world, only anti-Muslim and xenophobic media groups are allowed to function, disseminate fabricated information. When the sectarian violence started, actually not sectarian, is state-sponsored violence, started, UN agencies and UNHCR, NGOs engaged in humanitarian relief operation had left from Arakan because the government want them. They do not take any security for them at all. In the absence of violence, in the absence of evidence, the Rakhine streaming of security forces, police carried out genocidal actions without the knowledge of outside world. And after the violence, President Thein proposed a policy that amounts the ethnic cleansing, asking United Nations to arrange Rohingyas people to be removed from Burma, sent to third countries. And many people been arrested, many people been tortured after the violence, and we, according to our information, Butidong jail, 43 dead bodies, Rohingya Muslims were buried in mass graves near the jail fencing. They were tortured jointly by jail authority and government authorities. There are about 700 Rohingya prisoners in Mongol and Butidong. We have received that the most of them been tortured, living without food and drink, which leading to death. So what action we need for these people? International community have aware, but we really need international community action. For this, I would like to highlight, ensure that aid to be delivered, and Rohingya people should come to their original places where their villages were burned down, their houses were burned down. It is very important. I would like to highlight today, and also Muslim countries need to ensure that establishment of UN Commissioner of Inquiry, because recently President Thein formed internal investigation team. Inside that team they have put some people who have mastermind this violence. So it will not be credible at all. So we really need independent and credible investigation through UN Commissioner of Inquiry.
Thank you very much and good evening. I will speak briefly. I also speak with humility because others here this evening are far more expert than I. I also speak mindful of the fact that I can only begin to try to understand the horror of what is happening. But I also speak with respect and admiration for the fact that we are gathered in this great hall addressing the issues. And I say that because it is in this great hall that in the last few years, the themes of equality, of the importance of the rule of law, and of the vital part that overarching international law norms can play, have been addressed. And addressed, as many know, by none other than the Lord Chief Justice, the President of the International Court of Justice, and the like. Those values have real resonance in the situation under discussion. But I know it will be first and foremost in people's minds this evening that whilst discussion of the situation is critical, what we all really want to know is what we can do. And my suggestion, it's the main point I'd just like to leave you with this evening, is that there is something that everybody can do. I start, however, with those who are fortunate enough to have a voice that is going to be heard because of the position they occupy or those they have contact with. I say to those, they aren't all of us, don't include me, but to those I say, there is a duty to speak out against what is wrong, and the duty especially lies on those fortunate enough to have a voice that is going to be heard. I say next something in relation to what governments can do. What governments, in my submission, must do most of all in this situation is lead by example. What example does the Bangladesh government set when it turns people away and turns humanitarian aid away from those, whoever they are, that need it? What example is the Myanmar government setting when it encourages Buddhists to reject Muslims? When it makes a statement on the lines of, we do not recognize people, when those people, whoever they are, exist, and that's where we must start from. But that goes for the people who are fortunate enough to have a voice that gets heard, and that goes also for governments. But perhaps it's valuable to remind ourselves how every one of us in this room can do something. And I mean do something beyond discussion and do something beyond fundraising, important though those things are. Now let me just start by bringing to your attention a brief passage from the Human Rights Watch report. They captured local people distributing pamphlets in which there was advocacy for the separation of communities, and there was encouragement for the Arakan people to exclude the Muslims. The way that the matter was argued was put in these terms in the pamphlets. They, the Muslims, are eating our rice and staying near our houses. So the best thing to do is to separate, is to protect ourselves from others. We don't want a connection between the two peoples. Now that is the language of pamphlets, according to Human Rights Watch, that are circulating in the zone we're talking about. You can see three things about that. First, things have escalated to get to that point. One thing has led to another. An incident between two individuals becomes an incident between two groups, gets to the point when two entire faiths are being set against each other. Secondly, this language of separation and their eating our rice does not deal with the reality that all these people exist. And thirdly, if one follows the path articulated in those pamphlets, one thing's for sure, bad things will get worse. So against that example, from the zone we are so concerned about, for every one of us, there is something else we can do here in the East End, whoever we are. We can lead by example. We can make sure that we promote here understanding between faiths and different groups. We can make sure that we here respect everybody here as equals. We can make sure that we never fall into the trap of hearing that an individual has done something wrong and then condemning everybody associated with that individual or everybody of that individual's faith or background or belief. And if we hear anybody else falling into that trap, we can do our best to stop them. Now, those are minor things, but we can do them here. And if we all do them, we set an example which actually is an example of conduct which, if we saw in other parts of the world, would lead to a reduction of the type of escalating, impossible situation that we're currently seeing in the zone that is under discussion. So tonight is no talking shop. We can all do something. It might individually be modest, but cumulatively it really matters. It matters as much as those reminders of the importance of equality, of rule of law, and of abidance by international legal norms that have been emphasized by distinguished guests in this great hall. I thank you very much.